the burned phone she hid in my piano. I play a grand that isn't mine in a lobby that pretends to be a living room. My audience is expense accounts and people who forgot what they came downstairs for. If I do it right, the ice melts faster and the servers make rent. On a good night, I get to be part of the lie everyone tells themselves about how easy the evening was. She came in during a rain that had learned patience. Her dress was black and deliberate, the kind that keeps a room from changing the subject. She didn't look around. She moved like she'd already memorized the furniture. At the bar, the manager slid a glass across to her before she finished taking off her coat, which told me she was not new to this place, only new to me. Halfway through Misty, a weight tapped the underside of the Steinway fallboard near middle C, not a knock. Something placed carefully in the dark space between felt and wood. I lifted my left foot, eased off the soft pedal and heard it again, the whisper of plastic against cabinet. On the next phrase, I dropped my hand and reached under as if adjusting a pedal block. My fingers closed on a shape the size of a cigarette pack, warm from someone else's hand. Cheap, matte, anonymous. Burned phone. I kept playing. I looked nowhere. On the last suspension before applause that tisn't, I slipped the phone into the pocket of my jacket hung on the bench. When I glanced toward the bar, she was looking at me with an expression people save for perfect lies, gratitude and apology, equal parts. She raised her glass a quarter inch. I finished the set, nodded at no one, and slid the phone into the crook of my palm where a pick usually lives. Backstage storage in hotels is a myth. We keep our privacy in the service corridor that smells like lemons and secrets. I opened a housekeeping door with a key card I wasn't supposed to have and lit the phone with my thumb. No lock screen. A text thread open to Emma. The last line read, "Drop at the piano. 10 feet from the host. No one will search the artist." Another thread, unnamed, held photographs. Invoices, a permit stamped emergency fast track. A selfie of a man with the kind of smile people practice in mirrors when other people pay them to. He was holding a shovel at the groundbreaking of a waterfront project we all pretended was inevitable. And then audio. A voicemail that had been forwarded twice. A man counting votes out loud as if they were apples. He named the council members like stations on a train he owned. I locked the screen and heard my name, low and unhurried. "Nico," she said, trying it out on her mouth the way a person might test a key. Up close, the perfume resolved into citrus with a rider of danger. "You're very good at not looking surprised." "I play the same songs every night," I said. "The only way to stay interested is to be surprised at the right moment." She stepped close enough that I felt rain on the wool of her sleeve. "I'm sorry for conscripting you," she said. "It's the safest place in the lobby. No one searches art when they're searching people." "Who are they searching?" I asked. "My husband's staff," she said, with a controlled gentleness that read as practice or survival. "We're leaving after his speech. They will pick up his coat and my bag and my phone and nothing else. I needed the nothing else to live somewhere their hands won't. Yours." "Your husband is," I started, "because it's a small city and our villains like the same tailors." "The one who tells cameras the river belongs to everyone," she said, "and tells developers the river belongs to them if they behave. The burned phone is a diary he didn't mean to keep. I mean to give it to someone who will read it aloud without loving the sound of their own voice." "And me," I said. "You're the piano," she said. "You make the room believe we deserve to hear what we're hearing." "You could have handed it to the front desk and asked them to safekeep it," I said. "They wouldn't have said no to that dress." "They wouldn't have said no to his staff either," she said. "You're a better vault. Also," she glanced at the bass clef, "I heard you last week. You make a melody tell the truth without punishing it." The manager's voice crackled on my earpiece, polite panic disguised as schedule. 2 minutes, I told her. Keep it until the second set, she said. Then put it back where you found it. 20 minutes later, retrieve it again. There will be hands on the piano in between that aren't yours. Can you not be mysterious for 2 seconds? I asked. She lifted a hand, touched the lapel of my jacket where the phone warmed my ribs and smoothed the cloth like she was ironing in tension. Mara, she said, 37, good at speeches I don't believe in, better at leaving on time. There. I played the second set like a man who had learned a new instrument. At the bar, her husband arrived with people who believed they were the story. He was taller than on television and shorter than old rumors. He kissed Mara's cheek like past tense. They talked to donors, those predators who have taught friendliness to behave, and the staff who watched those predators spend. The room filled with the choreography of people pretending they enjoy being seen. On blue and green, a hand I didn't own reached under the fall board. It belonged to a man with a tie 2 shades too expensive for service and a jaw that trained its owners to apologize. He patted the bottom board, found only the ghost of the weight I'd removed, and withdrew his fingers with a nod I felt more than saw. He moved back to the bar and said something into a sleeve. Mara didn't look. She listened to me instead, eyes half closed the way people listen when they're choosing something harder than dessert. At the end of the tune, she put a 20 in the jar with a flourish no camera caught, and as if folding a handkerchief, slipped a card face down onto the lip of the music rack. I read it between notes, RM 812 after the speech, if you want to know where to put the phone. I don't go to rooms when women in rings ask. I don't make a habit of believing anyone's emergency is my purpose. I finished the set, took a walk around the block to remind myself how sidewalks behave in rain, and returned to watch him do what he does best, make people applaud the math that keeps him fed. His speech was about resilience and markets and the way the city mutates to fit the story being told about it. He thanked his team with the tone of a man who believes names are a tax. He mentioned Mara once, as if she were a department. The applause had the sound of cutlery pretending it's a choir. 15 minutes later, the lobby decompressed. A donor cornered a deputy director like a gull stalking a sandwich. The husband's staff ferried coats and devices into a small geography of control. I waited 2 minutes longer than a careful man would, then slid the phone under the piano again. 3 minutes after that, a busser I know only as Leo leaned in to collect it with the elegance of a hand that has learned to act like light. He walked toward the service corridor and pivoted toward the elevators instead. I texted the number labeled Emma from the burned phone. He has it. 8F. Reply 812. They will search the wrong bag once, knock twice then once. I put the phone back in my pocket like a second heart, told the manager I was practicing in a quiet space, and took the staff elevator up in the company of silence. 812 opened halfway on the second sequence. Mara stood barefoot on carpet that had never learned modesty. The room had been staged to make taste look like restraint. She closed the door and leaned against it the way you do when you have decided not to make one last mistake. You didn't have to come, she said, but let me in like a promise. But I'm glad you did. She pulled the curtains with an efficiency that told me she had pulled many curtains for the benefit of other people's choices. Then she turned to me. We were two adults in a room designed by someone who likes to make decisions for strangers. I handed her the phone like a candle. He'll send someone back, I said. He'll claim he lost a cufflink. He won't risk me telling his staff why, she said. He'll play patience until morning, then cry theft to a friendly ear. He's very good at renting outrage. Who's Emma? I asked. My sister, she said, who lives 2 states away and owns a filing cabinet that no one knows about, and who believes me even when I work hard to confuse her. She sat on the edge of the bed, phone in her lap like an animal that trusts the wrong person. I stayed standing because sitting felt like a confession. She unlocked the screen and scrolled like a person moving through grief, a slow intake of pain, a faster inventory, the pause when you find the sentence that makes everything else make sense. I listened to the river in the wall, the discreet whoosh of HVAC pretending we paid for air. She looked up at me once, mouth a little open as if she'd had to remind herself to swallow. He says he needs the slush in the budget to keep the machine moving, she said. He says it like physics, and he says the rest like kindness. It'll be good for us, for the schools, for the river, for the river. She smiled then, small and precise, as people do when the knife is familiar enough to pet. He hates the river. It doesn't obey. What do you want me to do? I asked. Nothing more, she said, except something I've never been good at. What's that? Stay, she said. It wasn't an invitation disguised as tact. It was a sentence that had learned honesty in a broiler. I took the 2 steps between us and kissed her like the person I intend to be. It wasn't frantic. It was precise. Her mouth tasted like citrus and speech. My hand found the line of her shoulder and asked. Her shoulders answered by melting a degree I did not deserve. We kept it. YouTube would approve, heat contained by respect, breaths shared and clothing unmoved. She pressed her forehead against mine and laughed once, a sound I've mixed into rooms to make them forgive themselves. I don't want to borrow your good, she said. I just want to be next to it while I return mine to inventory. So keep it, I said. Tell the truth on purpose. She nodded as if I'd reminded her how her own hands worked. Then she slid the phone into a hotel envelope, sealed it with the tidy brutality of a person who used to be an assistant and is now a general, and wrote a name I recognized from bylines that had gotten people fired and saved. She set it on the desk like a submission. Her eyes brightened the way stainless brightens under proper polish. Coffee, she asked. In a minute, I said. We stood there, the distance between us now a decision we agreed on together. And then the knock, twice, then once. The old service code pretending it learned it from coincidence. She didn't move. I picked up my jacket and found the jacket wasn't what I cared about and placed it down. The knock came again, followed by his voice, steady, warm, practiced. You left your scarf, he said. Can you open the door, love? She looked at me, all nerves out of sight. He hates scarves, she said. We waited. The lock rattled like a memory that had been filed, not burned. Then the elevator's ding, a retreat's punctuation. She breathed out. We made coffee we did not drink. At midnight, a bellman who knows me from tips and silence took the envelope with a nod and said, I never see the labels, which is why I always tip him. In the morning, the city learned how to say conflict of interest without yawning. The reporter published generously, gently, like someone who knew she was pulling a thread connected to a lot of shoulder seams. It was all screenshots and quotes you could explain as misunderstandings, and a series of times that, lined up, spelled intention. The river got 2 paragraphs that made it sound like a patient who remembers your birthday. He called Mara, then texted, then called again. He posted an apology that apologized to the idea of trust. He held a press conference where he tried to keep his anger from looking like injury. He did not say her name. He never does. She stayed at another hotel that didn't ask questions and texted me pictures of the breakfast she didn't eat. I sent a photo of the piano with the fallboard open and the space under it empty, proof that sometimes the room hides only what you ask it to. Nights, she came by the bar and took the corner stool, and we learned to touch each other with sentences we weren't afraid of rereading. When it was late enough to be honest, we let our hands do research on faces and wrists and waists. We did not undress anything except pretense. Our heat was not a secret, it was an agreement. A week later, she sent me a picture of a lease. It had her name on it and an address that rented trees with the window. "Keys Monday," she wrote. "You can be the first to make noise." "Noise is my religion," I wrote back. We didn't do grand declarations. We did grown things well. A moving day with cardboard and pizza. A quiet dance in a kitchen whose tile had survived other lovers. A folded blanket placed on the chair that had belonged to someone who didn't deserve to have it thrown out yet. We chose patience that didn't feel like a sentence. When we slept, we did it like a promise we could keep. He survived in the way men like him survive, by changing vocabulary. He talked about serving in new ways from a different building. He leveraged contrition into a panel about ethics. The river kept flowing. When it flooded, he called it climate again and not permits. The phone story became yesterday. The paper used it to wrap fish, which is not an insult if you like fish. At the hotel, I still play the songs that let people behave. Sometimes a hand searching under the piano for something that isn't there touches nothing and learns. Sometimes a woman sits on the corner stool and watches my hands instead of the room. I don't play Misty when she's there. We have our own weather. If you're looking for a lesson, it's the kind a chord teaches you when you voice it clean. A burned phone hidden in a piano is still a voice. You either use it to tell the truth, or you let it rot in silence that will betray you later. You can live a life that requires a lobby full of friends, or a life that can survive with one person who listens like a metronome. Choose what you can play in public without flinching. The Steinway remembers where her fingers pressed when she steadied herself on the fallboard. I do too. Some nights when the rain decides to be patient again, a weight taps the wood near middle C, ghost of the first time. I reach under and find nothing but the shape of a device my hands got to hold for a minute while someone I wanted decided she wanted to be honest more than she wanted to be safe. I play the bridge slower and let the room hear itself. The ice melts. The servers make rent. The evening tells one less lie. And when I look toward the bar, she raises her glass exactly a quarter inch, and I play the last chord like a door she gets to open.